Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
What a morning we have working with you here, and so glad you're along for the ride. Booger McFarland's here for the big fella. One big fella in for another. We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Bunch of things to get to here, and a great hour in front of us with Jon Gruden and Kirk Herbstreit back-to-back as we have every Wednesday. I want to mention quickly the bobbleheads continue. You know that Mike and I have taken ourselves out of the bobblehead business, so our wives are giving them away. Stacey's going to do a predict the score contest with the Yankees and Indians tonight. So if you want to get involved in that, you want to win a signed Mike and Mike bobblehead, you can go to her Twitter feed.
I keep laughing how you say Mike and I have taken – your wives force you to take yourself.
It's really not true.
But it is true.
Well, what happened? I mean, if you want the true story, you want to just make a joke about it. The true story is
true.
Chris started giving them away because people were tweeting and saying I would like them, and she just sort of gave in. She felt she's got like a soft spot.
Yes.
And so she was like, okay, oh, yeah, sure, you're nice. You've loved the show all these years. I'll send you a bobblehead and all that. Stace saw this and said, can we do this? And I said, no, we can't. Mostly because you know me. I don't want to be bothered with anything. And then when Chris started giving that many away, Stace starts yelling at me like, well, no, we're going to start giving away bobbleheads. So I said, okay, well, now we're giving away bobbleheads. So now we're in the giving away bobbleheads business.
Thank you. You proved my point. So the wives forced their way into giving away the bobbleheads.
Well, one way or another, if you want to predict the score, who do you think is going to win tonight? Yankees, Indians for all the marbles.
Indians.
The Yankees, you think the Indians with Kluber?
Kluber. I think Game 2 was an anomaly, not the norm.
Well, if you go to Stacey's Twitter feed at StaceyGSG, you can predict the score, and you could win. I think she's giving away 3 bobbleheads today. Meanwhile, also on Twitter, I'm just looking at some of the reaction on the soccer. Again, if you're just waking up and you hadn't heard, I'm really trying to get a gauge for how significant this is to the average American sports fan.
Right.
Based upon last night's loss to Trinidad and Tobago and a variety of other seemingly improbable circumstances, the American men will not take part in the World Cup this coming summer. I mean, it's amazing when you think about it. It's a huge story that because we're right in the middle of the football season and the baseball playoffs and everything else is not going to get all that much mainstream attention today, I don't think. So I'm trying to get a sense of that. But we're not in the World Cup. First time since 1986. So SR tweets at us, this is an embarrassing loss for U.S. soccer. Fire the coach, get players who want to be there. Reg Jones tweets, I believe that we will win was awesome to hear and participate in the summer of 14. It will be missed next year. And I agree with that. I think right now, because we're in the middle of the football season and then the baseball playoffs, people aren't paying a whole lot of attention. But when the World Cup starts and people wake up and say, oh, wait a minute, that's right, we're not in this, I think that people will pay attention to that then.
No doubt. And there's a lot of blame to go around. People want to blame Jurgen Klinsmann. They want to blame Bruce Arena. They want to blame the players. I think in the end, when you look at the skill level of some of our players, I mean, Tim Howard's ancient now. I mean, where's the youth? Where's the young goalie that's coming out? I think the skill level has to continue to get better. We have to improve that. And the players have to take ownership, Greeny. When the NBA sent their players to the Olympics, the Dream Team, there was ownership there. We took ownership saying we are the best basketball country in the world. We're going to show it to you. I think the same has to be done for the U.S. men's national team. They have to take ownership and feel a real sense of pride in the sport.
Keep those tweets coming through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. If your football obsession has strained a relationship, you need 1-800-Flowers.com. When you order a dozen red or assorted roses for only $29.99, you get another dozen plus a vase absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. So from football to football. Anyway, good morning, Jon Gruden. How are you today?
Doing great. Good morning, guys.
Yeah, Booger McFarland's in with me today. And let's go over the game that you guys had on Monday night because it was interesting on so many different levels. Let's start with the debut of the Bears quarterback. What was your impression of Mitchell Trubisky?
I was really impressed, Mike. I thought he did a good job against a very good defense, a sophisticated, experienced defense in primetime TV, especially early in the game. If it weren't for a few penalties, the Chicago Bears, I think, win that game. And some of those penalties I didn't like. I thought they were ticky-tack. Touchdown called back because a receiver held. He had a beautiful throw in the opening drive down to the 12-yard line on third down. It was called back. He scrambled. He made some plays in the pocket, outside the pocket, and he just gives the Bears hope. And I think that's a big start right there.
John, what would you do going forward with Mitchell Trubisky? Obviously, he had a pretty good start. Now, how do you push the envelope forward? Do you continue adding to the playbook, or do you continue repping some of the things that he's doing and just have him do them a little bit better?
Well, I think we have to face reality in Chicago. Number one, they don't have any receivers that are notable. They're missing Kevin White. They're missing Meredith. They're out for the season. They're not coming back. They moved on from Eddie Royal and Alshon Jeffrey. They have a bunch of no-name wide receivers that really have struggled to make any kind of an impact at all. They just don't have very many weapons outside Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen, who's a rookie. So I think you're going to see more bootlegs. You're going to see more of an emphasis on play-action passing. But if they don't pick up some wide receivers that can make a difference, I don't care who plays quarterback. They're going to struggle to move the ball and put points on the board. It's tough.
One of the things that I think is most interesting about this, and it is certainly not unique to the Bears and Trubisky, is that in that game alone, he took more snaps from center than he did his entire collegiate career. So with that thought in mind, how do you devise an offense for that? Are you force-feeding him what we would consider to be a traditional pro-style offense? Do you think we see more and more of what guys like Andy Reid and others are doing, where they're mixing in a lot of college concepts? Where do you think that is going, not just in Chicago, but across the NFL?
Well, I think it depends on your personnel. I think the best player on the Bears team right now is Jordan Howard, and you'd be a fool to get in a shotgun and run a bunch of zone reads. You want to get this man deep in the I formation and really enhance his running skills. He's a guy that can dominate a game. He is outstanding, but in the long run, you want to be diverse. You want to do a little bit of what Seattle does if you have an athletic quarterback. You want to try to merge some of the things that you see in college football, the zone reads, the perimeter offenses that really use the no-huddle offense. But I think you have to enhance who your best players are, and right now in Chicago it's the tailback. And off of that, they've got to create some play-action passes and some bootlegs until their receiving core comes on.
John, looking at the other team, Minnesota, Sam Bradford, the trainer says he has wear and tear on his knee. We don't know if that's going to get any better. You have Case Keenum. Teddy Bridgewater could be ready soon. What do you make of the quarterback situation in Minnesota?
I think that's one of the most difficult quarterback groups to figure out in all of football. I think Bradford's on the last year of his contract. I don't think they picked up the option on Teddy Bridgewater's contract. Whoever the medical people are going to have a huge say here in trying to determine who has long-term sustainability. Is Sam Bradford going to be healthy? Can he stay healthy? What does the doctors say? What do the medical reports say? How severe was Teddy Bridgewater's injury? Is he back to the Bridgewater of years past, or is his game going to be compromised? I think you have to get all these medical facts, and you have to really be prepared to make a difficult decision, because you're going to have to invest in one of the two, none of the two. And in the meantime, you're going with Case Keenum, who is a bulldog, a Jeff Garcia-type bulldog quarterback you can win with. He's proven that, especially with a good defense. But I have no idea where they're going with those two injured quarterbacks.
That's the long-term question, and I agree with you. But as far as the short-term, I heard some people suggesting yesterday that until and unless Bridgewater is ready to play this year, with Bradford being as injury-prone, and I'm going to use the word brittle, that might not be exactly the right word, but whatever it is, not dependable as he appears to be, that they should just make a decision. We're going to play Keenum. We're going to rally around him. So everyone who the quarterback is, we have some stability at the position. Does that make sense to you, that you just say, we know this guy is available, he can get the job done, at least we'll know who the quarterback and the team will know who the quarterback is every week, and just decide on that?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I don't like playing injured quarterbacks that can't take the reps on the practice field and you can't count on. But if you go back and watch the opening game, when he played against the New Orleans Saints, we were there. He looked as good as any quarterback in football. So you have to really be careful what you say. It's still early in the season, but I would give him a couple weeks to try to get that thing completely healthy and rally around Keenum, who really made a statement the other night in Chicago.
Mike, Jon Gruden's with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. So that was last week. Let's go to this week. The Colts and the Titans, a couple of injured quarterback situations there as well. We started Indy. We won't see Andrew Luck this Monday. We're not sure when we will see him. We're seeing some pretty good things, I think, out of Jacoby Brissett from what I've been able to see. I'm sure you're watching the film. What are you seeing from Jacoby Brissett?
He's athletic. I did not know Jacoby Brissett was this athletic. I mean, he is winning games with his scrambling ability. He has a big arm. He can throw any pass from any body position on film. I have seen that. And they have a dismantled offensive line. I think they're on their third or fourth different center. The protection hasn't been great. But he has hung in there and really done an excellent job considering when he got to Indianapolis. I mean, he got here late in this process, and he has come alive and really given the Colts some hope with his athletic ability and his powerful arm. And T.Y. Hilton is still one of the best receivers that I've seen in the AFC.
So that's the game this coming week, the Colts and the Titans in Tennessee. And as we let John go, we just couldn't live with it, John. We need a song you like. Is this a little better?
Hey, you should start every show with David Lee Roth, if you ask me. Thanks for having me on. That fires me up. Have a great day, McFarley. Keep it going, guys.
Thank you, John. That's Jon Gruden with us. It's always good to leave him with a smile on his face. Like, John, he's not even in the room, and he intimidates me, so I'm glad to see him. Did you see the look on Bickler's face when John had that initial reaction? Good stuff there. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Comparing rates to help you save. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today and find out how much Progressive could save you. So some football there with Jon Gruden on the field in the NFL. And we'll do some college football on the field with Kirk Herbstreit coming up in a few minutes. And Herbie, Booger, I'm looking forward to listening to you and Herbie talking because obviously both of you are as well-versed in college football stuff as anybody is. But we also understand that the off-the-field football stuff is about the biggest topic in sports right now. And within the last half hour or so, the President of the United States has tweeted again about the NFL. I will read it to you. This was from 6:47 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, so basically a half hour ago. It is about time that Roger Goodell of the NFL is finally demanding that all players stand for our great national anthem, respect our country. I don't know that that's a fully accurate way to describe what happened yesterday. Roger Goodell sent a memo. I'm sure by now most football fans are aware of it to all the clubs, and they will have an owners meeting this week to discuss this at more length. But if I were to summarize the memo, it was basically Roger Goodell telling the owners that the league has come to the conclusion that they need to figure out a solution to this because the protests, whatever their intention are, have created a reaction that is harming the league. Yeah. And that, I think, was what what Goodell was saying to the owners. What exactly is coming, whether the owners will unilaterally implement a rule that states that all players must stand for the anthem or not, we don't know. We've obviously seen what Jerry Jones has said. We know the Dolphins have made such a rule. Now, Booger, you played in the league a long time, and I know you to be a very thoughtful man. And you were talking about this with me a little bit in the makeup room before we came in, so I'd love you to share some of your thoughts.
Well, Greeny, first of all, I think it's gotten to a point where it's a lose-lose situation because the initial message that Colin Kaepernick was putting out there about kneeling, which is police brutality and social injustice, is now gone by the wayside. And now it's become both sides grandstanding. It's about the flag and the anthem and the players, and now the economic model of the NFL is starting to be affected. And so when I say it's lose-lose, the players' message is no longer being heard. In the NFL, the economic model is starting to be affected by sponsors and things of that nature. So here's what I say, Greeny. If I were in a locker room right now, I would tell everybody, let's stand. I would call a player on each team, and I would say, let's stand. Regardless of how you feel, now's the time to stand because what you're kneeling for is no longer being heard. Then I would go to Roger Goodell, and I would say, Roger, you want everyone to stand because it's now affecting our game. It's affecting our bottom line. Let's be honest about this. Where the money is where people are going to listen. So when the sponsors are calling saying, hey, this is a bad look, we have to listen. We understand that we're all in this game to make money. So now, let's everybody stand. Now, Roger, that everybody, all 1,700 players are standing. Can you help us? Can you now be the voice of us? Because we listen to you. More importantly, you and everyone else and your owners, your bosses, listen to the president. The president he's made this his agenda. So now that we're standing, we need our voice to be heard. Because the original message was about, can we do something about the police brutality and the social injustice? So I would ask every player in the NFL today, if you can hear me, stand up. Stand up. And then once everybody stands, tell the commissioner, now we're standing. Can you go stand for us? Because the initial message is gone, Greeny. So now it's a lose-lose situation. Everybody's losing. The NFL is losing sponsorships. People at our company are being affected because of grandstanding on either side. So it's lose-lose now. So if you're an NFL player, it's really simple. Stand up. Let's take the politics out of our game. Take the politics away from the NFL. Let the fans get back to football. And then once that happens, now somebody stand up for us. Take our message, take it to the commissioner, and the commissioner, you talk to your buddies, talk to the 32 owners, and take our message to the president of the United States. Because if he wants to grandstand, if he wants to call us out on Twitter every morning at 3 a.m., 6:30 a.m., you're listening. Are you going to listen then? That would be my message. Are you going to listen then when we do what you ask? You want us to stand? Great, we'll stand. Now, can you listen? If we stand, can you listen? I think that's where we need to go right now, Greeny, because it's obvious that the kneeling and the anthem has overtaken everything else. And so I would just ask, if you're a player and you can hear my voice, just stand up. Stand up. Let's unite in a different way. Let's unite behind each other and get back to the common cause. And the cause is really simple. We don't want police brutality. We don't want social injustice. Kneeling no longer gets our cause heard. Let's stand and see if we can get our calls heard. So, Greeny, that would be my message.
I understand what you're saying. I have a variety of questions, and these are really complicated issues.
Yeah.
So it isn't as simple as, oh, you're right. So, right? Or oh, you're
Correct.
dead wrong.
Correct.
It is a complicated issue on a variety of levels. The first I would have would be in which order, if I was a player and I was moved to be doing what many of the players are doing, in which order would I do those things? Would I say to the commissioner and or to the owner of my team and or to the president of the United States, would I say, I will stand and then I demand that you listen to my cause? Or would I say, if you listen to my cause, I will stand? Now, that might sound like a subtle difference, but I don't think it's a subtle difference.
Right.
It's a significant difference.
It is.
It is also making the issues that we're talking about here into negotiating chips, bargaining chips, which I understand not the idea of not liking. I don't like the idea of negotiating or bargaining over whether we're going to stand for the national anthem, and I don't like the idea of negotiating or bargaining over whether we're going to stand against police brutality and social injustice. Those don't feel like things that should be negotiated the way we negotiate benefits and other things like that. But that does feel, and also at the same time, in some ways, that where we are now.
It's the next step, though, Greeny.
What we have here is the president of the United States has made this an issue.
Yes.
It's one that he feels he's winning on, and he's not going to let it go. And as a consequence of that, so many people find themselves in a position that they cannot control.
Yes.
And so I understand where your sentiment is coming from. And it makes some sense to me. I would need to sit and think a little longer about whether there is another answer to this, but it certainly feels like a legitimate dialogue is the only place to begin. And I don't know that legitimate dialogue is taking place. It feels to me like if I were a player, I would want to say, if I was a player on that team, I would want to say to Jerry Jones, or if I was a player on his team, I'd want to say to Stephen Ross, or any of the other owners who might have this, the New York Jets, I think, with Woody Johnson and others. I understand what you want me to do.
Right.
Are you listening to what I want you to do?
Exactly.
And if that becomes a two-way street, then I could understand approaching this the way you're talking about.
And Greeny, I don't look at it as a bargaining chip. Here's the way I look at it. As the players started taking a knee to be heard, now that message has been overtaken by so many other things.
Right.
Okay, so now as a player, how do we redirect the conversation? How do we redirect the message? And it's not bargaining. It's more, okay, we're taking the next step. And the next step, for me, in my opinion, is that the players all stand. So now let's take that step, put the onus back on, one, our commissioner, and two, our commissioner can put it back on the president of the United States. It's amazing. We don't want to talk about politics and sports. But here's what I say to everyone out there. When the president of the United States tweets sports companies, sports personalities, he's bringing us in. And you have to respond in order to get the dialogue rolling. So the NFL players are going to have to do something, and Roger Goodell has to be a part of it because he's the commissioner of the National Football League, and he also works for 32 owners who, a lot of them support Trump. So he's got to toe a delicate line there. I truly understand that. But guess what? When they pay you $30 or $40 million, they pay you that to toe those lines. They pay you that to straddle those fences. And I think he's got to do that. More importantly, he should do that for the betterment of this league, because if he's concerned about the bottom line, he said one time, my goal is to make this a $25 billion league. We're halfway there. Halfway there. Since he's been the commissioner, we're more than halfway there. And I think if we can handle this small crisis, and I think he handles it the right way, he'll be indebted not only to the players. The players will appreciate it, but he'll also move the dialogue back to where it needs to go, which is on the racial police brutality and the social injustice.
What do you think? We'd like to hear from you. It is a big picture topic, obviously, and it's one that none of us signed up to become sportscasters to talk about, but I totally agree with you. This is no longer an issue that can be ignored in the interest of stick to sports.
Yeah.
This is sports. This is what's going on. The President of the United States has drawn a line in the sand and placed NFL players on the other side of it. And to ignore that is to ignore what's actually happening in the sports world.
Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Home isn't just a place, it's a feeling that you're safe to enjoy the things that matter most. ADT lets you take that feeling with you, whether you're at home, your business, or online. We help keep you safe with security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling for less than $1 a day. ADT. Home. Safe home.
All right, Booger McFarland is here for Golick today. We've got a lot of reaction, as you'd imagine, to the conversation we just had about the president and the kneeling and everything else. We'll get back to that, but let's stay on the field here. Every Wednesday at this time, our pleasure to welcome in Kirk Herbstreit as College Game Day is getting set to go to Harrisonburg, Virginia, for Villanova James Madison this weekend. Good morning, Herbie.
Good morning. How you doing?
We're doing great. Let's go all around a little bit here, and let's start with the game that you guys had Saturday night in the monsoon in Ann Arbor, and the somewhat stunning result as Michigan State, which it felt to me, I watched the second half of that game, it felt to me like they intercepted every other pass that was thrown, and they wound up handing Jim Harbaugh a really tough loss in his own building that night. It's brought up a lot of questions about where Michigan is and where Harbaugh is in that program and everything else. What was your biggest takeaway from that game?
Michigan State's back as a competitive team. I don't know if they're back getting to the playoff, but they were 3-9 last year. That's coming off the three best years in school history, and they had off the field issues and just everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten about it, to be candid. And I think it was a reminder that Mark D'Antonio can coach, and they seem to have right now a little bit of an edge on the mindset of that rivalry. Michigan players continue to kind of say, especially their alumni, Ohio State, Notre Dame, those are our rivalries. Michigan State, that's not really a big rivalry for us. And meanwhile, Michigan State's down the road going, just keep taking that. No problem. That's 8-10. Not a rivalry. So I really walked out of there thinking, not so much what's wrong with Jim Harbaugh. Man, he can't beat Michigan State. He can't beat Ohio State, because I think this program is obviously in great hands, and they're only going to get better. I looked at it and thought, this is somewhat of a rebuilding year for Michigan. Not that they rebuild, but they lost 43 seniors. I mean, they lost 10 starters on defense. You're gonna have a few setbacks when you lose that much experience. So I was more impressed by Michigan State than I was really down on Michigan. Now, John O'Korn replacing Wilton Speight, that's a real issue. He might turn out to be great, but we've seen him play now against Purdue, where he looks really, really good, and then we saw him against a good defense in Michigan State, and he had his struggles. So I'm anxious to see where he is this weekend against Indiana.
You know, Herbie, I completely agree with you. And people questioning Jim Harbaugh as a college coach, to me, are insane. Herbie, what I would ask you is this. Let's take Alabama and Clemson and set them aside. In your opinion, who's the next best team out there in the country? I think that's where the real debate is.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a week-to-week thing for me. I mean, for now, it's a Penn State Georgia debate as we sit here about week 6. I would maybe give Georgia just a little bit of an edge based on what they've had to do with their schedule. Going on the road against Notre Dame, probably kind of the game that they would put a little asterisk next to. But I just don't. I mean, you still have a young quarterback, you know, and he's going to get into some situations that are going to be challenging for him to really see where he can be. So as I sit here right now, I'd give Georgia a little bit of an edge because of the way the defense is playing, and Fromm has been a great compliment to what they're doing with the running game. But it's, you know, at some point you're going to get into a game, Booger. You know what it's like. I mean, quarterback's going to have to make plays when the world is watching and everyone knows, okay, this is where it's 3rd and 7. Can he do it? Because right now he's throwing a lot of off the play action. They're establishing the run. They're dictating when he's throwing. They're going to get into a game against Auburn. They're going to get into a game maybe against Florida where he's into those obvious passing situations. That's my one concern for Georgia down the road. But as we sit here right now, I'd give them just a slight edge over Penn State, with Penn State being that 4th team.
Yeah, we'll definitely agree with you on that one. Penn State still has their tougher games coming up. You know, Herbie, we often talk about who's the next best team after Clemson and Alabama. No one mentions Washington, and in my opinion, it has to do with how they looked on a big stage against Alabama last year down in Atlanta. How do you look at Washington, and are you kind of torn based on how they looked against Alabama last year?
Man, that is a great point and a great discussion if we're going to be honest with ourselves. There's a reason that the committee and people who watch this sport give the Alabamas, the Clemsons, the Ohio States the benefit of the doubt. It's staying power. It probably shouldn't be that way if we're being really honest, but it is. We know there's proof in the pudding. Like, we know who these teams are because they've been there and done that. And with what Washington did last year, and the game wasn't a blowout, but they didn't necessarily, as kind of the new guy on the block, they didn't help themselves as far as showing, kind of building credence of who they are as a brand. Now, it doesn't impact me. We talk about this all the time. When Oregon was kind of building that brand up, because we had so many Oregon games, I was a big Pac-12 Oregon guy. I would try to really say, no, Oregon, they could play with these teams. And they opened up the season with LSU and Tyrann Mathieu, and the game got away from them in the second half, and people in the SEC kind of laughed at Oregon. I think Oregon on a given year, and Stanford and USC and now Washington, maybe Washington State, I think they can play with the best teams in the country. But I do think, to answer your question, what they did last year does hurt them as far as perception, because I think the people outside of that region don't necessarily give the Pac-12 maybe the credit that it deserves. And I think a lot of times they end up losing in that debate. With all that being said, I have no problem at all looking at the way Chris Peterson is building that particular program with the defensive line, the linebackers, the quarterback play, and giving them now, for me, I can definitely give them now the benefit of the doubt moving forward. If they beat the teams that they still have left on their schedule, I think Washington's in a position to be able to capitalize and definitely secure a bid in the playoff if they were to win out.
Mike and Herbie with us, brought to you by by Allstate. You know, sometimes we see these upsets in college football, and they're somewhat easy to explain. You mentioned Michigan State and Michigan. Well, Michigan State is better than we thought they were. Sloppy track that night, rivalry game. Then you look at what happened to Oklahoma an afternoon against an Iowa State team that was like in total disarray on a variety of different levels, and they go into their building and beat them. I'm always curious about that. How do you explain that? How does something like that happen to a team that all of us believe is as good as Oklahoma is?
Mindset. collectively, not respecting your opponent. It sounds like elementary or middle school approach, but when you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids, look at the Oklahoma team. Look at the energy and attitude of when they played in Columbus. I mean, they wanted to beat the world. They could have played, I don't know, it was like in their mind they could have played the Packers. They were so fired up and on edge. They wanted revenge on their mind. They had a purpose. They were tired of hearing about Ohio State, tired of hearing about what they did in Norman the year before. This was their chance. Their leader, Baker Mayfield, man, he was like, not today. We owe these guys. We're going to get these guys. And they played out of their minds, right? Well, all of a sudden, we all start saying, well, okay, Oklahoma is going to represent the Big 12. Everybody's telling Oklahoma how great they are. They're in the playoff after 2 weeks. And what happens, and this is what Nick Saban talks about, is rat poison.
I was going to say it's rat poison, Herbie. This is the rat poison.
I'm telling you, man, Nick Saban works 52 weeks out of the year, not 12 during the season. 52 weeks. He has mental coaches that come in and talk to their players, because what they're doing in Tuscaloosa and how they avoid complacency and how they keep their edge is unprecedented. We just don't see it. And for the most part, you know, they don't have weeks where they show up flat. That's hard to do for 12 straight weeks with 18 to 22-year-old kids. And so what I think happens to Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley, great coach, first year, has a team, you know, with Baker Mayfield. They almost just show up against Baylor. Baker's on the sideline after he scores touchdowns, yelling up to the fans. You know, you got to be a professional. You have to be focused on the purpose. You can't. I remember Pete Carroll telling me, I used to talk to him about his SC teams when they were rolling year after year after year. And I was like, man, it's crazy how you guys can go. This is when they were really good. They could go anywhere in the country, whether it's a team that they're favored by 30 against or a team that they're favored by 2 against. And they were the same brand, same team every single week. And his point was, we don't look at our opponent. We work so hard against each other and compete so hard against each other that Saturday, that's recess. Like, that's a given. We're going to go out and do what we do. So he created a mindset that don't look at who we're playing. Oh, it's UCLA this week. We really got to get fired up. He looked at it and challenged his team to just get ready week in and week out, regardless of who the opponent is. And that's what Nick Saban does. And I think Lincoln Riley, he learned probably a valuable lesson as the first-year head coach, that you can't ride the emotion of, it's Bedlam, now we go. It's Ohio State, now we go, here we go. You can't do that. You kind of go against perfection. You go every week and you don't get caught up in the media and Twitter, all the shenanigans and all the outside noise. If you allow your team to get caught up in that, you're going to show up, take your foot off the gas, and you're going to get beat by Iowa State by a backup quarterback. I mean, that's embarrassing for Oklahoma, and we'll see how they respond to it. But that's what happens to me in college football, and it's going to happen to somebody this week. You look at the slate of games, it's really not great. But you know what? Someone's going to lose Saturday because they're not going to respect their opponent. And I promise you, we're going to talk next week on Wednesday, and you're going to say, holy cow, Herbie, how did this team lose? It's going to be the exact same thing. It's an epidemic. It's a challenge for these coaches, and somebody will be a victim this weekend.
We'll have that conversation next Wednesday. College Game Day again this week in Harrisonburg, Virginia for Villanova and James Madison. Have fun, Herbie. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, guys. Have a great week. See you.
Kirk Herbstreit every Wednesday with us here, Mike and Mike. A little late. We'll take a quick break. Lots left to do in just a moment on Mike and Mike.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I've never felt more alive.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will feel more alive. You either possess functioning respiratory and circulatory systems, or you do not, or you are a zombie. If you are indeed a brain-starved zombie and you would like to save money on car insurance, the Geico legal team applauds your excellent life choices, even in your shambling afterlife. But we strongly encourage you to visit geico.com or download the Geico app. Please stay a minimum of 500 feet away from our large and presumably delicious, delicious brains.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
And we are Mike and Mike with Booger McFarland here. I'm looking at some of the Twitter reaction, and here are the things that are so disheartening to me. And I don't want to necessarily call out individual people because I understand you have your lives to lead and you may not be following all these issues that closely. But I have a tweet from someone named Joel after your passionate words, whether you agree or disagree with your stance on the kneeling and the standing that the Booger had earlier this hour, and we'll get more deeply into it coming up shortly. I think everyone can understand your heart is in the right place and all of that. And then there's a tweet here from Joel. Beyond kneeling, where are the stories of NFL players meeting with local police to make a difference in their community? And the answer to that is, Joel, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. So if you're not aware of them, then you're just not paying attention to them. And that's fine. It's not your job to be looking into what NFL players are doing. But the problem with that is that people have this an immediate force field reaction. Oh, well, the players aren't doing anything but kneeling. Yes, they are. There's a story today about how Doug Baldwin and other members of the Seahawks met on Monday at the team's practice facility with members of the Seattle Police Department. And Baldwin said, at this moment, we're scheduling a meeting with the mayor of Seattle, police chiefs across the state. That's the first step, to have communication. We need to know the perspective of other people. The greatest tragedy for any human being is going through their entire lives believing the only perspective that matters is their own. We need to break down those walls and barriers and get people to see that there's perspectives outside of their own eyes. That's Doug Baldwin talking, okay? That's a player. So if we want to divide this into sides, and it breaks my heart that we seem to be, but that seems to be where we are now. We got the NFL players on one side, we got the president of the United States on the other. That's their side, okay? So if you're on the other side, that's their side. They are meeting with the police. They are opening, they're talking about how the tragedy is going through your life believing only one perspective matters. Are you listening to them? That's the question I'm asking. I get all about, I understand totally your perspective and you're offended by the kneeling before the flag. I get it. I'm willing to listen to that. Are you listening to them? Are you listening? And I don't feel that, and I'm aiming that at a lot of people.
Yeah.
I don't feel people are listening. And so while I understand you are thinking that if the players were to all stand, that perhaps people would start listening, I worry. Because the people that they're asking to help, which is their bosses, which is the owners in the NFL, I don't know that their interests are all aligned.
Well, Greeny, and to me, at that point, now that brings up another issue. Because do I think all 32 owners are on the same accord? No. But I do think that there's enough good people in the position of ownership that they understand that the players are a huge part of the game. And if the players are going to go out there and put their body on the line, the physicality with everything that's going on with the life-threatening injuries, CTE and concussions and all that, then I think there are enough good owners that would want to stand up for some of the players. Now, am I naive to think that all 32 feel like that? No, because I think there's some owners based on their political support, based on where they put their money at, not their mouth, but based on where they put their money at, I know where the affiliation lies. And that's okay. They have that right to it. But I do think there are enough that are concerned about the players. And if the players stand up and talk to the commissioner, say, Commissioner, we've done what you've asked. Now can you help us? Let's get some dialogue with 45. Let's talk to him. Can he hear us? Because the same issue that was there 18 months ago is still there. Okay, the police brutality and the social injustice is still there. While we've hijacked this about the flag and we're talking about everything else, let's get back to the beginning.
Mike and Mike, our Sports Center, brought to you by Pennzoil. This time of year is for performance. You know, fall's the best time to catch some gridiron action. Pennzoil Synthetics, give you the wear protection and fuel economy for those long drives to the stadium. Pennzoil Synthetics, complete protection for top engine performance. Make the switch. Get a coupon for $5 off your next oil change at Pennzoil.com. All right, back to some baseball, and we got trouble in Chicago.
Sniffles.
What is going on?
Get some Dayquil. Get some Dayquil.